Hello, my name is Joseph Fisher, and this is a video presentation for my 5-task portfolio on the 2021 Security Data Analytics and Visualization for the University West of England. I will talk about my initial thoughts for each task and go over each of the 5 tasks individually and do a small critical reflection at the end of the presentation. Before starting any of the tasks, I was not very proficient in using Python. I wouldn't call myself a programmer, and I wouldn't say I'm proficient with any sort of programming language. So beginning off, it was quite a struggle to get into using Python. I did a small bit of Googling and researching to get myself into the gist of the syntax and how everything worked with Notebook and Jupyter So initially, it was very difficult to start the tasks. However, I feel I improved a lot and gained some real life experience for it. Starting off with task 1. Task 1 was to create 3 different plots off one singular dataset. This task was not particularly difficult, and it was very straightforward because it had a singular defined answer, unlike the later tasks, which I will talk about when the time comes. We had a mark for each line, bar and scatter plot from our dataset. We had to change our code for loading in the dataset, but no problems there. So we have a simple dataset and a game to plotting each of the 3 charts. This was not very difficult. I wouldn't say that there would be any future problems with a small task like this. This is the basics of plotting and using a dataset that you will need to know in order to expand your knowledge and to further increase the visualization for other datasets and future tasks and future challenges. The one thing that I would say that I struggled with on this task was the syntax of plotting and using matplotlib. In the bar chart, for example, I used plt.show after defining all the variables in one line. This was the matplotlib method I already knew by defining a dataset already and then just purely using plot.show with the dataset. However, with the scatter chart it was slightly different because you have to define the values and rows of the dataset rather than just plotting the dataset itself. So there was a little bit of a struggle with that, but it didn't take me too long to overcome it. Moving on to task 2, this is the first real life scenario where we were given as a task. We were given a small data set from 150 machines classified as malware. Now this is a very simplified version of a real life scenario. Now we were given the data set. It wasn't particularly hard to complete with the week 4 practical on clustering and centroids that we were given. However, there is still definitely some room for improvement. This is the first encounter with sort of training data, with a training set and a testing set, although in this case they are both the same. Now, the task itself wasn't particularly difficult if you followed the straight pattern and knew what you were doing from the week 4's practical. Now, I wouldn't say I faced anything too difficult in this task. However, there are definitely things that I would like to improve on. This is definitely a very simplified case of a real life scenario, and it would no way at all be this simple. So there are things that I would like to improve, specifically the accuracy rating. It's only at 93% on this simplified program, but personally I couldn't find a way to improve it at all if we are just doing the simple ways of calculating the values from the dataset. Now moving on to the largest of all of the tasks, task 3, when it comes to data analytics and especially visualization. This one was incredibly difficult as there's no sort of complete answer for you to strive to. Yes, there are suspicions to be found and various activities that could be said as the final answer. However, there is so much data to look through that I couldn't find myself saying it is complete. Task 3 was definitely one that had slow progress. You had to spend your time looking through all the datasets and creating visualizations and charts and displaying the information that you're gathering from each dataset. I personally found it very difficult to search for what is suspicious in such a large amount of data. Yes, we had to separate the data sets and then separate them further into roles and then separate the users into what they are doing. However, with so much data, it is really, at least personally for me, it was really hard to discover what could be suspicious. There are aspects in task 3 which I would say are incomplete for what I did. I wanted to create investigations and visualizations for each dataset and to find suspicious activity in each dataset. However, there weren't all the results that I wanted, and there weren't all the investigations that I wanted to do as well. I had to spend a long time organizing my thoughts before even jumping in, which is something I regret. I would have preferred to try to plot everything as much as I could, rather than spending my thoughts of what could be suspicious. It would be much preferred to create plots and visualizations for everything, all the activity that's going on, separate them into roles, and then separate them into the users that are outliers in that role. However, I don't think I spent enough time on this task, and I wish I could have done more. By no means do I feel like I failed this task, I just failed to complete all of it. I found suspicious activity, however, I feel I didn't create enough visualizations and plots for each of the datasets to feel it is a complete task. There are various aspects that I would like to improve on this, however most of it needs to spend more time rather than anything else. I wouldn't say that I developed any new techniques when it comes to task 3. However, I developed a more thorough thought process when it comes to separating datasets, organizing them, and changing them into plots. However, there are still some improvements that I would like to make, mostly on the creative aspect of visualization. One thing that I struggled with heavily on task 3 was creating plots that showed more than just one set of information. In this, I'm just looking through some bar charts, and on this case, I failed to create a stacked bar chart where each of the different colors are separated by the role. This was something that I wanted to create, but didn't have the technical skill in order to create. Most of the problems about task 3 stem from the fact that there is just so much data, and now, considering this isn't a real life scenario, and this is only 6 months worth of data, apparently, this is a huge project to undertake for a single person. I can understand that in security data real life jobs, you would be working in a small team, and in order to sift through all this data as well as find suspicious activity, you need to know what is suspicious. Now, in this aspect, I am very, very inexperienced, and I admit that. And that is one thing that I can't change unless I work myself into the job and do more things like this. That is something that I can't fix just by putting in some more effort. Now onto the final practical part of the portfolio, task 4. Task 4 was particularly difficult to start because I knew nothing about machine learning, scikit-learn, and text analytics. However, I feel like I completed it to a very high standard compared to my previous knowledge of when I started the task. The largest real-life problem when it comes to something like text analytics and task 4 is you're never able to completely create something that is 100% accurate. Even with many different training sets and testing sets and many different classifiers, you will always find out that something is never 100%. Now, also with something like this, we were given what was true and what was fake. However, in a real life scenario, you don't know what's true and what's fake, and that's why it's very hard to determine the accuracy of something where you don't know if it's true or fake before you test it. This was a very difficult task for me to start. I didn't know anything about the classifiers, I didn't know anything about TF-IDF vectorizers or weights or stop words or anything like that. So I feel like I overcame quite a big challenge and came to a big realization about Python. And that realization is that 90% of Python can be finished with one function. You don't need to write anything too specific. There's always a function that already exists that you can go and find and learn and use. When starting off with this task, I used the lecture that Phil gave us as a reference and started with the interesting words concept, as well as getting rid of all the stop words and punctuation and things like that. But there are functions that he gave us in the libraries that will do that all for us. Something that came to a surprise for me is how little I actually needed to code. I thought it was all going to be very specific and very hard to do. But in actual fact, it's not hard at all. What you need to do is understand how to use Python and how to use the libraries, which, at least for this type of scenario, that is the understanding that I came to. Now, in other sort of harder analytics, I wouldn't know what to do. Such as task 3, I really struggled. But task 4, when it's more of a specific answer and a more specific thing that you're searching for, such as you're looking into the text of the articles and you're seeing whether they're true or fake. You're not checking everything to see what is going on. You have an answer, true or fake. That was the big deciding factor that made this task a lot easier than task 3. Again, same as task 3, I wouldn't say I developed any new techniques. I just came to a more thorough understanding of how to use Python, and that there are functions for everything. You just need to learn them, learn the libraries, and learn how to use them. Now, this is something that obviously you'll gather with time for using Python, but I don't see myself using Python a lot in other scenarios in terms of uni work and real life jobs. But that's because I don't have the experience. If I do find that I need to use Python, I know that there are things in Python that can be done in a flick of a switch, basically. There's something that I've learned from a YouTube video that I've referenced in this task, and that is the accuracy rating of the classifiers. Now here we see the accuracy rating is 98.9 just from the .predict function. However, if I use something called a k-fold cross-validation, you see the accuracy slightly drops. Now, this is something that I learned and recognized, is that the accuracy is never completely truthful. The k-fold accuracy, from what I understand, gives you a little bit of a more truthful answer to your accuracy. By separating all of the data, the train and the test data together, you will get a higher accuracy, which is weird to say, and that is something that I learned, that nothing will ever be 100%. There is something else that the video taught me, and that is when you use your classifier, your machine learning algorithm, on the 100% truthful articles and fake articles, you will never get 100%, ever, until something develops further into either technology or programming. You'll never get 100%. That is something that will have to be monitored by real life people and not an algorithm. That's why nothing will be perfect. You will always need a little bit of hands-on technique in a real life scenario, and that's mostly what I've taken away from this task. And finally, onto the critical reflection. I'm not going to talk too specifically about this or read anything out, because I will just end up reading it all out loud, and that's not the point of the video presentation. I did, however, think that I wrote it quite informally. I've never had to do a critical reflection before, and it was quite nice. It was helpful. It made me realise what I actually understood from what I coded and what I didn't understand, what I would like to understand. There are a lot of aspects about all of these tasks where there could definitely be some improvement, and I would like to continue improving on that. It's definitely increased my understanding of cybersecurity and security data analytics in general, as well as visualization and plotting and things that I would have to develop for a job and for job experience. I don't have any internship experience, job experience, placement, anything like that, and I feel like from this module I definitely need to, because there are many things that I need to develop before heading into a real job, and there are things that I don't understand at all about cybersecurity. That's definitely what these tasks have opened my eyes to. And this will be the end of my video presentation. Thank you very much for watching. I know it was definitely not very professional, and there are things that I could improve on, especially my speech and the way things are edited, but that will be all for my first presentation, and hopefully only for security data analytics and visualization. Thank you.